Lowkey Giant.
Sonia Erika is a serial entrepreneur focused on solidarity economics. When her immigrant parents informed her that she was an illegal alien, she panicked, then kicked into gear and got herself into Harvard. Sonia's vision of the future includes communities of connected people, robots, and new experiences through rebirth and belonging.
I think my earliest childhood memory with technology was being a very young child in Mexico. And my dad used to get these games that had been copied from its original file. So this was like, back in the 90s. And somehow he was connected to a friend that had all of these games that are actually very similar now to what you would to Photoshop. And so that kind of became my base of my kind of artist path, because images, I'm a very visual person. And if we look at NFTs now, a lot of the NFT art is just a visual imprint. And so having that experience and having a father who was very much obsessed with cameras and capturing footage, that kind of really shaped my pathway. I'll start off by saying that I was formerly undocumented. And what that means is that it's basically what you hear on the news with the term illegal aliens. I was once an illegal alien. An illegal alien. And that has definitely shaped my whole life and even the way that I see economics and tech. And well, first I'll say that I found out that I was undocumented when I was in high school. And I only found out because at that time of our lives is when we start, like applying for jobs or getting driving license. But unfortunately, I discovered that I wasn't able to do any of those things. And as soon as I discovered it, I kind of just felt like really strange. Like, why can't I apply for a job or get a driver's license because of a number? I didn't really understand it. And it wasn't until applying for college that I realized that I wouldn't be able to attend because my parents didn't have money to pay out-of-state tuition. As an undocumented person, you have to pay out-of-state tuition even though you've grown up. Like, I grew up in Wisconsin basically since I was the age of 6. I got into all the state schools because I had really great grades. I was a super nerd in high school. It was really isolating, but I'm very thankful for the isolation in high school and being like one of the only brown people in my school. But finally, college time came and I knew that I wanted to continue my education and I knew that I wanted to get out of my house. I knew I wanted to run away and go into another reality. And so in some way or form, I found out that Harvard actually accepted undocumented students. And I applied very last minute because I wasn't very sure that I would get it. I wasn't sure that I would get it. When I was sitting in class one day, I opened an email that said, "Congratulations on your acceptance to Harvard." And I couldn't believe it. And it was the biggest shock to me. And I couldn't believe it. And it was the biggest shock to me. It was the biggest shock to one of my classmates who was, the nerdiest white boy in school who everyone thought was going to get into Harvard. But unfortunately for him, he got waitlisted and I got in. And so everybody was very upset because they were like, what? he was supposed to go to Harvard. He's the biggest nerd. But little did they know that I was also a really big nerd. And half of the people that criticized me, or most of the people that criticized me, weren't even in, the advanced classes. So it's like, how are you going to tell me when you're not even in my class?
You're not even in my class.
My introduction to tech has also been from my father because he was a laborer. And so he told me from a very young age, beware of companies because they will use you until you're not physically useful and then they will throw you away. And so that fear was definitely kind of instilled in me from a very young age. And I saw technology as the way. I saw it as a solution to heal this human sickness of using ourselves for our physical labor in such an oppressive, negative way. Because the robots are coming, right? The robots are coming. The robots are coming, right? The robots are coming. And it's something that we can't avoid. It's something that is happening. And how do we actually let the robots into our society in a way that is healthy and helpful and not just perpetuating the already existing productivity that we have at the moment?
Lowkey Chime.
During college, I felt like I needed a little bit of time off from Harvard because it's definitely, while I was very happy to get in, it was also a very isolating space again because I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't come from wealth. A lot of my classmates, roommates, they were loaded, and so to be a student that, doesn't have the money to pay for tutors to do their homework so that I could also party with them, it was very conflicting for me. And I also didn't have a sense of purpose yet. I didn't really know where I was going or what I was going to do. And I felt like I was just wasting my time in school. And so I ended up taking 3-month Ruby on Rails boot camp. I took a year off of Harvard. I pursued this boot camp and I completed it, made a few apps with my classmates there. But funny enough, I decided at the end that I didn't want to be a coder. But you know what? I think it's important for people to try it because it helps them understand, like, is this something that I want to do? And also understand deeper, like, how does this technology actually work? Even if it's not something that we're going to fully pursue. But that's not to say that I completely left technology because I've actually continued to this day building websites and helping people with their, visuals. Visuals are my thing. I love creating an image that represents something, a brand. During that time that I took my time off from Harvard, I also started making music. And one specific piece of music that I'm really thankful for is a song that I made with one of my classmates from Harvard who was also undocumented. And it was kind of strange because he also ended up taking a year off from Harvard, and we both ended up taking a year off without knowing that we were each taking a year off. But he was going back to Mexico because his mother had just gotten terminal cancer. And so they thought that they could find a cure, and they thought that, if they went back to Mexico, there would be some sort of medicine that could help. And unfortunately, she ended up passing away a few weeks after they arrived. And so as an undocumented kid, he wasn't able to come back to the US because he didn't have papers. And so he called me and he was like, hey, can we make a song for my mom? And I was like, yes, let's do it. Let's do it in her honor. And so we made this really beautiful piece called Cielo, which means sky in Spanish. And it just talks about the sacrifices that our parents make to get us to where we are. So that's one of my favorite songs that I've ever made. Fortunately, he was able to actually come back to the US. Shout out to Harvard. It has its good and bad. Everything has, not everything is completely good or completely evil. So we have to kind of also work within that world. The same with technology, right? Like nothing is ever really good or bad. The robots, will they be completely evil? No. Will they be completely good? No. So how do we work with that balance? So a lot of my emotion behind blockchain and crypto comes again from my identity as an undocumented person and wanting to find solutions that actually help humans be humans and not have to be laborers, right? And so part of that came through an introduction to cooperatives, which can be worker owned businesses or consumer owned businesses. And I see blockchain kind of like having that similar structure because in a co-op, there is no boss. It's not a triangle. So in a regular business, you usually have a boss at the top, right? From the top to the bottom. And the ones on the bottom earn the least. What if we could change that? What if we could change? What if we could make it a circle? What if everybody could be valued with equity?
Waiting my life for the sunshine. All of my cloudy days, you were just a prayer away. Waiting my life for the sunshine.
What if all work became valuable? Because we live in a society where we value people like Jeff Bezos, but, frown upon the person that's like cleaning the toilet. But we appreciate when the toilets are cleaned, right? I think it takes a mind frame to kind of change that mindset. And why shouldn't everyone get a livable wage? Why should there be a huge pay gap so that some can have an excess and others can have barely enough? And that's what I really respect about blockchain, is that it creates a sort of transparency that allows people to understand and to let go of control. Because as humans, we're not perfect, we're flawed. And so when we give up that power and we give it to technology, it has the possibility of creating something that is good, that's transparent, and that allows people to communicate and get maybe even paid equally. And so one of the really cool projects that I think is around at the moment is resonate.coop. And this is an app using blockchain technology. It's kind of like the Spotify, but co-op version. And so it's owned by the artist. The platform is owned by the artist. And what happens when we start owning the platforms? That changes everything. Another co-op that I'm loving at the moment is art.coop. And so art.coop is another group of musicians, artists that are trying to create a study into action where we will create a curriculum to kind of defy capitalism, which sounds really crazy because a lot of us have become, we live in capitalism. It's normal. But what would it look like if the world was different? What would it look like if we didn't have to exist in a world where labor was taking so much time and life out of us?
Lowkey Giant.
And of course, one of my favorites, the Kindness Grocery Co-op. Kindness Grocery Co-op is just, it's just magic. It's not a grocery store. It's kind of a pop-up co-op that is constantly inventing itself. First, it started with the bath parties. And bath parties have already happened in 3 different cities, in Oakland, Berkeley, and Skid Row. And so this co-op is taking resources, excessive resources from our community to bring it to members of our community that don't have that excess of resources. And not only are they doing that, so they're providing food, clothes, but they're also trying to provide like crypto education to those community members so that they can actually catch up and be part of this movement. Because what is the point of creating, this whole new world with Bitcoin and crypto if the same portion of population that has been successful in the past will continue to be successful in the future? That doesn't really change the world. It just creates the same system. It's the same system. It's the same system. It's the same system. So Kindness Grocery Co-op again, because it's like a pop-up of so many different ideas. Another thing that it's doing is it's helping artists create NFTs. And they gathered a community of artists, including myself, and they minted our artwork and they put it out into the world. And I just want to say that that's just so powerful and beautiful, because it's rare to see that in our communities, right? Like usually people are just doing it for themselves. And so I really appreciate that project. And I encourage people to check it out. There's a really beautiful collection of artists. Some of them are visual, some of them are more choreographers. I personally uploaded one of my music videos called Make Love, Hacer el Amor, which was filmed in Mexico. And this was the first kind of song that I created after coming back to Mexico for the first time in 21 years since being an undocumented human. And so I just want to really give a shout out to that and encourage people to check those beautiful NFTs out. We definitely need education to spread to the masses so we can get to where we need to be. Another area that I kind of went into when I was in college was marijuana, weed legalization. And I saw weed legalization as this beautiful utopian possibility where Black and brown people who had gone to jail would be able to now finally participate in the market, in the legal market, and make money from what we've been doing for years, right? Instead of going to jail. And I had this beautiful, beautiful vision and hope. And unfortunately, as it continued to legalize, that hope continued to be crashed down because the same kind of people that already hold wealth continue to kind of monopolize the market. And specifically in Massachusetts, which is a state where I helped legalize, this was happening. And why was it happening? Because of government. Government officials did not have enough education to implement the law that had been legalized. So weed was legalized in 2016 in the state of Massachusetts. The same day that Trump became president, weed became legal. And it happened like this. All the consumers were waiting for it. Legalization, legalization. Unfortunately, the government was not ready because the people in charge of implementing the law, some of them hadn't even ever consumed weed.
What?
And I want to really pair this up with crypto. So this is a parallel to crypto because this is the same thing. Now that crypto is becoming legal, blockchain is becoming, a technology that is known and more prevalent throughout our earth, our governments. Who is actually creating the decisions on how this technology will be used? And do they know enough? Do they know enough? Do they know enough? Do they know enough? We have to really, as consumers, as constituents, as citizens, residents, as humans, we have to make sure that our political representatives understand this technology. Because if we don't have that piece, then everything that we're doing and that we're trying to do, unfortunately, will kind of crumble. Because, in the weed industry, so many of us were already participating in the illicit market. And somebody can say that with blockchain and crypto right now, whoever is kind of participating in this space is also participating in an illicit market because blockchain and crypto are not yet recognized by the United States of America as a formal payment, right? Like the US dollar still holds so much value. Like you can't pay the IRS with crypto. And so really making sure that our political representatives and our government officials know and understand this technology is vital, because without that, everything falls apart. And I actually even remember there was a blockchain company that came to us, and they were located in Maine, and they're called Trace. And they had a really brilliant idea of using blockchain technology to track the plant from seed to sale, so that you could see exactly where this plant came from and then track it from, okay, it's a seedling, now it's in this space, now it's going to be sold to a dispensary, now it's in the hands of you, the consumer. And as a consumer, you would be able to scan the RFID, you would be able to scan an ID that would show you, where did my plant come from? Unfortunately, the government was not ready for that. And so again, education is key, and really making sure that everybody, especially government officials, because you may think, oh, if they're a government official, they know everything. But the reality is, no, you probably know more than they do. I want to share this quote because this quote is really the key to our community. It is vital to act as if you live not in the world that you already know, but in the world that you know to be possible. This is the difference between living and surviving. And so what that means is, instead of focusing on like, oh, the world's gonna end, why don't we focus on the world that we wish to see? And that's where I love people like the co-founders of Art.coop, Nati Con Razon, the co-founder of Kindness Grocery Co-op, Asia, because these are people that are totally going against the grain of society and really believing in a world that they believe is possible. They exist in a world where they are letting their magic come through. Don't let somebody tell you what the world is going to look like. Create the world that you want to see. Another great book I'd love to recommend for this concept is Debt, D-E-B-T, Debt, the First 5,000 Years. And it talks about how we created the concept of value for the US dollar. It's all fiction. It's all a community believing as a whole that this piece of paper has value. And so it's the same thing with these cryptocurrencies that are now coming out. The real value comes from the people who give it value. Take the time to really understand what you're investing in. And do you really actually believe in what you're investing in? And if the answer is no, create your own coin, because this world is limitless. Like tomorrow can look so many different ways. It can have so many different possibilities.
Lowkey Giant.